one of the most, probably the most touching experiences that I ever had was I ran this 200-mile race across Wales, and my mom had died just about a month earlier from
Oh,
cancer,
I'm sorry to hear
and
that.
yeah, she was watching me from above, so I was, running across Wales, and I hadn't seen my dad's and talked to him in a long time, probably like 12, 14 years or something.
Hmm.
So we just not great communicators with each other. I mean, he lives in England, I live in the States, and we're just really, really bad at picking up the phone. And I called him up, obviously after my mom died, I was like, I have to just pick up the phone. That's all it takes. And called him up and told him I was coming to visit, and that I wanted to see him. And he came out. He was at the finish line, and when I crossed that finish line, I saw him. I just burst into tears and gave him a big hug. And it's still like, I think about that moment. It was definitely one of the most special moments of my life.
Welcome to the Trail Success Podcast. Well, welcome to the Trail Success Podcast. I'm Mark Freese, the host of today's podcast, a trail runner for the last 5 years, and an enthusiast for all things in nature and endurance related. And so excited to host the podcast today. We'll introduce our guest, Peter Mortimer, in just a moment. But the purpose of the Trail Success Podcast is to give trail athletes opportunities to learn from everyday trail runners who are balancing life and sport, so that they can be inspired and so that they can inspire others. And so we really want to support trail running education, motivation, and inspiration here on the Trail Success Podcast. And today's guest with us is Peter Mortimer, who has been on the trail endurance scene for a number of years. And exciting as well is an entrant in the upcoming Western States 100 with just a few days out. So Peter, welcome to the Trail Success Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we'd love to start with today is it'd be great to get kind of your origin story. I think everyone's got a hero's journey story to tell in their own life. It'd be amazing to hear some of your background, kind of if you go back a ways, where you grew up, were athletics part of your life as a child, as a teenager. Would love to kind of get your background and where athletics fits into that, and who you are as a person.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the United Kingdom. I'm still an English citizen, actually. I moved over at an early age when I was 8 years old. I lived in the States for a few years, and then I moved back over into Europe. I spent 5 years in Italy. Went to high school over there. My stepdad was in the military. That's kind of what brought me over. But
Mm.
both my original parents are from the UK. So I played English football, soccer as a child, and tennis. But running was not in the cards for me.
Okay.
It was the worst part of any sport for like that I thought. And I had friends that run cross country and track, and the idea of running around a track for 3 miles was just, it was not going to happen. Although I did run plenty in like soccer practice. So, but it was just that kind of mindset of just nonstop running. And then I graduated high school over there in Italy, and I joined the American military in the Air Force 4 years. That brought me to the States, and I was a surgical technician, Travis Air Force Base, Northern California. That's what kind of got me into medicine, which I'm still currently doing, although now I'm on the other
Awesome.
side of the table. Yep, I had two kids and at an early age, and raised, now they're teenagers. My son is
Hmm.
16 and my daughter's just graduated high school. So I'm almost an empty nester at this point, and I found running at the age of 30 just as a way of losing weight. I was pretty heavy set, overweight. I was fit in high school, and then raising kids and stress and all this other things kind of contributed to bad eating habits and kind of a stressful lifestyle. And I needed something to break that. So I found running, and it kind of helped me start, the process of losing some weight.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Did I see you mentioned soccer, football early on? I think I saw something online. Liverpool, maybe a Liverpool fan or entering at least
Oh yeah,
Liverpool Stadium. I think you saw.
hardcore Liverpool fan.
Awesome.
I've been following Liverpool since the '80s, which was like their heyday, and they're kind of
Uh-huh.
having a resurgence now. So I'm pretty stoked about that. But loyal fan, never deviated. So ups and downs, but I've been thankful to been able to go to some of their games over the years and visit the stadium, that sort of thing. So.
That's
I,
awesome.
in fact, I did a race out in Wales in 2019, and I took some friends to the stadium to kind of show them the magic of Anfield.
Awesome. Awesome.
So,
Did you have any exposure when you were in the UK? I've got my family history goes back to the Lake District up in kind of fell running territory. Do you have any exposure as a young person to fell running or trail running, or was that not any part of your visibility when you were focused on football there in the UK?
no, it was. I mean, other than visiting places, it wasn't really trail running. Wasn't even on the map.
Yeah.
What's funny is I used to kind of steal away in my high school years. My friends and I would kind of, you know, take a skip day every year, and then we go run off into the mountains, which we lived at the base of the Dolomites, and
Mhm.
so we'd actually go up into the mountains and spend the entire day out there exploring, and then try and get back in time and get on the bus and pull one over on our parents. But I mean,
Nice.
I guess that was kind of like, part of my, early exploring days. I'm still doing that now. Although I don't have
Yeah.
to, get a fake teacher's note, but, you know,
Right.
I could
Right.
still spend plenty of hours out in the mountains.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service in the military. We appreciate that. That it helps the rest of us enjoy a lot of freedoms to have folks out watching out for us. So thank you for that. Any exposure, was that, you mentioned a little bit later in life, kind of food and weight became more of a challenge. How was sort of the athletic endurance scene in the military? Was it pretty light compared to what you do today? Or did that give you some exposure to a little bit more enhanced, athletic activity?
Well, in the military, I mean, I was, at one point I was skinny, and then at one point I actually got put on they call it the Fat Boy program. So
Okay.
I had to go into this regimen of losing weight, and so I would like run laps around the hospital at lunchtime. I had no
Yeah.
idea what I was doing. I was just trying to shred some weight, and it's funny. The last week I was in the military, someone asked me to do this track race where it's like a relay, and you run like a mile every hour for 24 hours. So you run basically
Mm.
24 miles over the course of 24 hours, which to me now is nothing, but back then I was like, oh my God, and it just about killed me. I wasn't even, I think I was probably running in Converse or something. It was just a bad idea. And I think I was sore for like a month afterwards. So, and then, yeah, just running like at that point was it was just a means to an end. Nutrition
Yeah.
definitely wasn't, high up on the um, things that I should be doing to lose weight. I just thought I should be running more, and I learned later in life it's completely the opposite. But yeah, my 30s, I finally started to kind of grasp what it was like, and the help that it did with stress and all these other things, and then the whole social aspect of it, like joining a running club and meeting some new people, that really helped.
That's awesome. You mentioned some of the health challenges. Was there, a moment where was it staying on the scale, visiting the doctor, was there a moment where you're like, I've got to make a change? And what had running be on that list of things that you thought, might be a way to achieve that change?
Yeah, I mean, stepping on the scale and seeing 250 pounds is not, it's not great.
Yeah.
Walking and your knees hurting for no apparent reason, that wasn't great either. Just being, I mean, I could barely get through a mile. So I kept
Yeah.
thinking back to how active I was in high school, and yeah, you just kind of you want to reclaim that life back,
Yeah.
and then again with all the other stress, high cortisol, all that stuff just associated with it. I knew I had to make a life change. When I was really started running, I was in a time my life was going through a divorce. I was in a really high stress job, working in the hospital. I was working
Mm-hmm.
80-hour weeks, and I just was eating like complete garbage. So I had to make some changes. And joining the running group was kind of the first step, meeting some new folks and just getting outside, helping motivate me. And then from there, it just kind of cascaded. I actually fell in love with the running as the weight came off and the miles started getting longer and longer. I realized, well, I might be kind of good at this, so I'll just keep
Yeah.
clicking away and see how far I can push myself.
Before we sort of follow that path of running turning into a joy versus a chore, um, as far as sort of balancing work, you said a surgical technician, and then you're on the other side of the table now. Does that mean you're having a lot of surgery? Are you a surgeon? What does that look like from a work perspective for you, and how do you balance that with your running today?
So I've worked in medical device sales for the
Hmm.
last 20 years in orthopedics. So
Awesome.
when I was in surgery, I did a lot of orthopedics, as like a surgical assist, and um, now I'm just kind of now I bring all the equipment in, and I'm kind of
Hmm.
helping the technicians and the staff, and sometimes the surgeon as we're working. So I do total joint reconstruction. So if you get a knee replacement, hip replacement, or and then trauma as well, you fracture something. I'm the guy that brings the equipment in, the implants in, and I talk with the surgeon. We develop a plan, and then we just kind of get to the case. And I have to have a plan A, B, and C. And but at the same time, I'm dealing with I have to sell product, get a surgeon to use the product. So there's the sales side of it. There's a clinical side of it, looking at
Hmm.
X-rays, figuring out every patient's different, figuring out the different sorts of implants that we need. Sometimes you need special things ordered in, and like anything in life, everything's in on back order. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to deal with those types of things. Notifying the hospital like, hey, we might not have this this date, or always trying to work around. So it's just you get a lot of cascading stress from all different angles, and there are lots of good days, but then there are some days that you just kind of want to bang your head against the wall. But I do enjoy it. I've always found orthopedics fascinating, and
Hmm.
I like to think I'm good at it. I've been doing it for many years at this point, but it's not going to be forever. I hope to do it for a few more years, and then kind of follow my dreams of going into coaching full time, and then maybe just
Awesome.
working for like a outdoor company.
Yeah, that's great. Early in my career, I had some medical experience and spent a little bit of time in the OR as a surgical tech, and it's fascinating. You probably have an understanding of the anatomy and orthopedics of running better than most, and so
Hmm.
that's thanks for sharing that with us. High stress, high impact, high necessity role that you play there. How have you balanced that with your running activity? How have you found a balance there that allows you to train? I think I saw, to give a little bit of a scope here for the listeners, right? Close to 70 ultra distance events I saw in ultra sign up. I think
Yeah,
19 podiums, amazing, which is remarkable.
yeah. Thanks.
How have you reached that level of trail running accomplishment while balancing relationships, work? What's sort of the secret there that you found?
Well, I think initially it was just when I got into trail running, I was a middle of the pack guy, so it was just
Hmm.
trying to even get these distances done. My kids were a lot younger back then, and I would I would get up. Especially, I lived in Phoenix at the time, so if you wanted to run, you had to get up early, beat the heat.
Right.
I sort of equate it to like being like a vampire. You just have to, you get up early in the morning, like around 3, you get in as much running as you can, and you try and outrun the sun. As soon as the sun comes up, you're
Yeah.
running back home. And I would get home, and then my kids be waking up, and then I'd be cooking breakfast, and then the day's ahead of me. And then, you know, work balance has always been difficult. But I've gotten, like I said, I've gotten used to it over the years. I've never had really my own schedule. I'm on the surgeon's schedule. So
Mm.
if they're taking time off, then I might have some free time. But if they're on call, then I'm on call. If they're doing surgeries, then I'm doing surgeries. So, and I don't work with just one surgeon. I work with many surgeons. So sometimes
Mm.
it can be a little challenging, relationship wise too. That was one of the things that, was very difficult in my marriage. When it kind of fell apart, is I was working these insane amounts of hours. And we were very young
Yeah.
and had kids, and just all the stresses compounding. My girlfriend Siska now, she's very understanding, and like one of the first things that when we first started dating, she realizes that there's times when we're out doing something and I just have to drop everything and go. And that's
Mm.
just the reality of my life. As far as my running goes with that, I just pack a bag. I have it in my car. I try and get, I'm fortunate now. I live in a place where, I can drive through Sedona or go to the Mogollon Rim. I get to drive through these very beautiful places, and I can just kind of stop off on my way down, grab a quick run, and then continue on to work. And I'm not stuck in the bumper to bumper anymore. So yeah, you just kind of you make do, and it makes for some long hours at times. But that's life and having kids, and there's there's tons of stresses associated with that. It definitely gets easier over the years. Now my kids are teenagers, and I have to beg for them to hang out with me. So
Yeah.
I get home from my run in the morning and they're not even up yet. So I can pretty much have a little bit more free time to do what I want.
They think you're sleeping in too, and you're like, no, I just knocked out 10 miles. Um, you mentioned going from running kind of being maybe it sounded like the easiest way to shed some pounds when you were not happy with the scale. But then at some point in time, it sounds like it turned a little bit more into a joy, something you enjoyed doing, a stress reliever. How did running and trail running specifically end up being your sport of choice? What was sort of that conversion process from nothing to an enthusiast, an evangelist?
So when I first started running, I joined a running group called the Hash House Harriers. They're
Hmm.
a drinking club with a running problem, social running group,
Sure.
and they're actually the biggest running group in the world. You can go any city pretty much in the world and find them. They're a fun bunch. So
Nice.
I joined them, and my first run with them was 3 miles, which at that point I was running maybe a mile and a half at a time, and
Hmm.
got through 3 miles. I was like, oh wow, I couldn't even believe it. What's great about their runs is you don't know where you're going. There's someone else kind of leaving a trail, and then there's kind of a right way to go, a wrong way to go, and you kind of help work together to figure it out. And I would go to some of these, and then there's times I come back and I'd run 6, 7 miles, and I just started
Wow.
thinking, I'm like, that was the most fun I've ever had. I have never run that far in my life, and as I started getting in longer distances, I thought, well, maybe I could do a half marathon. So I
Yeah.
trained for a half marathon, finished it, and then said, a year from now I'm going to do a full. So I trained for a year
Nice.
and did my first full marathon. I missed the Boston by like 10 minutes, and I was like, okay, that's my next goal. Um,
Mm.
I ran a few marathons and it came very close, but I wasn't really happy. You
Mm.
know, I don't deal well with really, really large crowds. I would show up to these things and I would kind of almost self-sabotage myself before these races, and to the point where like I would go out with friends and party way too hard, or I'd eat the wrong food and just, I really wasn't taking it as seriously as I wanted come race day. I was dead serious on the training, but when it came down to it, I just really didn't like it. And I ran a Tucson marathon, and I told my girlfriend at the end, I was like, I don't want to do these anymore. She's like, well, why
Mm.
don't you try a trail race? And so she showed me about this
Mm.
Air Viper race out here in the Southwest,
Yeah.
and it was a night run, and I showed up and actually had a very bad experience. Not so I showed up for this race, and I think it was a 25K, and
Okay.
as soon as I got to the race, I got there, a couple hours early just to kind of hang out and stuff, and then I got called into work. I'm like, oh, it was all the way across town. I drove all the way across town. I'm like, well, that's it. I won't be racing today. And
Yeah.
got into surgery, and they were like, we're setting up. We're a little bit delayed. So I went downstairs to grab something to eat, and I ate like a bacon cheeseburger and mozzarella sticks, and just kind of drowning my sorrows, as I
Right.
always do with food. And I went back upstairs, and they were like, "Oh, the surgery canceled." And I looked at my watch. I'm like, "I can make it." And so I hauled ass all the way back across town,
Awesome.
and I got there with about 60 seconds to spare. Got to the starting line and just took off. It was a night race. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never run on a trail before. And I fell twice, landed in a cactus, and I DNF'd after one loop. And it was the
Wow.
best experience I ever had.
Awesome.
I was hooked. I was like, this is what I want to do. I love this stuff. So after that, I decided, the trail running was going to be the thing, and it was very humbling because I thought it was a decent. I was chasing that Boston qualifier and getting close, and thought I was a decent runner.
Yeah.
But then you got into trail running, and you have to run much slower. I wasn't as strong as I thought I was, and these little speed bumps, I call them now. I mean, like they were like giant mountains to me back then. I was like, how am I gonna run up these things? And uh, but yeah, I stuck with it, and slowly but surely started to kind of get better.
That's amazing. Was it dirt versus pavement? Was it the smaller crowds? Was there something you could put your finger on? Was it all those things? What is it that had you leaving thinking I want to do more of these versus I'm never falling into a cactus again? I'm going back to the road. What was it about that experience you think that was so compelling?
It was definitely the community. When
Mm.
I would finish marathons, I would get to, well, first of all, the start of the marathon, you're hopping on a bus, and then you get shuttled somewhere, and then you're like
Mm.
standing with 20,000 people, herded up in this like corrals, and then you get going, and then you're just trying to get away from everything, and then one of my issues is I've got long legs, and so when I'm stuck behind a lot of people, I have to take these tiny little steps to get like my normal gait going. Um,
Yeah.
the trail racing, much smaller crowds. The community is much different.
Mm.
A big selling point for me was definitely the aid stations because it had amazing food. I wasn't
Sure.
just getting goo and water. It was like, oh, you want a quesadilla, or do you want this? Get burger, or I was like, this is amazing. They got all this amazing food. Again, it was
That's
still
right.
the fatty in me that was just like, yeah, I just this is my style. And then afterwards, everyone hanging out and just having a beer. But the end of the marathons, they'd have bands and stuff, but
Yeah.
there was just so many people and so much stuff going on. All I ever wanted to do was get out of there. I just couldn't wait to
Mm.
just get away from everybody and find some other like small little place to hang out with some friends. But they have beer gardens at the trail races, or and so it definitely was kind of fit my personality a little bit more.
And what was from those early experiences that were positive, what did the next couple of years look like as you started to get more involved in trail racing, and how long to you sort of went from that mid-pack success to starting to see, hey, I might have a shot at a podium here? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I ran a few trail races, and at the time I was playing indoor soccer, and I had
Yeah,
the idea of like starting to try some ultras, but I would go out on like Friday night and I play 3 games in indoor and just get beat my body to to shit, and then try and
yeah,
go out the next day and run like 25 miles. And at some point, I'm like, you got to pick and choose. And I was watching
mm,
everyone in our league get ACL injuries, and as much as I really like the sport, I'm like, I'm getting older, and I don't want to be the next, knee injury. So I think I'm just gonna, toss that aside, and I'll just stick with the running. And then, again, very humbling. It took a lot of time to figure out kind of what I was doing. I didn't have a coach early on.
mm,
I just kind of would read articles, talk to people, get feedback, but a lot of it was I really wanted to experience things on my own. I wanted to know what it was like to bonk. I wanted to know what it was like to hit
mm,
that wall. I and so I know when that happened next time, or if it happened in a race, what I could do. And I was training for my first 50-mile race,
mm-hmm.
and I was out. We went and ran the Grand Canyon. So I went with a surgeon that I know, and a couple of other friends, and we did a 2-day trip doing rim to rim to rim. Never been down to the Grand Canyon, had no idea what I was in for. We made it all the way across to the North Rim on that first day, and I remember thinking, I don't know if I can get back.
Yeah,
And For some reason, like the next day, I was, very sore at the beginning, and one of the other guys that he did the same medical device sales that I was doing. He and also a runner. We kind of just took off and just started running together, and we got through it together. We got across, and the surgeon that I was working with, he had said that and he had done 50 milers and 100 milers, and he was like, oh, you should just do a 100 miler. And I'm like, well, I gotta get a 50 done first. And
right.
I signed up for a 75K night race,
Yeah,
the Javelina Hangover, and I got as a lead up to my 50 miler, which is stupid. It was like a month earlier.
right.
46-mile race for a 50-mile race,
Sure.
and I got third. And I was
Wow.
like, okay, I think I think I can do this. I can do the 50 miler, and I did. I went out and did a 50-mile race, the man against horse, a month later, and then a month after that, I did my first 100 miler at the Javelina.
Awesome.
So yeah, I kind of cascaded very fast. And again, but I still didn't really know what I was doing. I was just I didn't know anything about salt, electrolytes, or
Mm,
anything. I was just like, just eat all of the food at all the aid stations, and just drink water and you'll be fine. And it got me through it. But on my second 100 miler, I had a rude awakening, because I got like severely dehydrated. I didn't get enough salt, and I quickly learned about getting in the right electrolyte balance, to because otherwise your body will stop processing food, and you'll
yeah.
just get a bloated belly, and you'll just be miserable. So
Tell me about, you mentioned the desire to sort of have the experience of bonking or fatigue or nutrition issues. What does that feel like to you in a race? And what's your mindset to overcome that situation when you run into those challenges?
fatigue. So yeah, the mental game in ultras, it's really difficult. I mean, I think you have to get into that black hole firsthand. You really have to kind of know. I mean, I've seen so many people just go so far into the hole and not listen to the people around them. If you have pacers, crew, the first thing you should do is listen to them. They know what's going on, and they have a clear head to what's going on. And if
Mm,
if they're experienced, the best thing you can do is listen to them. And that was one of the things that stubbornly, I would like to experience these things on my own, but I quickly learned that, I would just listen to the people that have been through this before. As far as like, dealing with that fatigue and the muscle pain and everything, I just kind of learned to block it out, I guess you could say. I've done some really long races at this point, and I don't really remember the really bad parts, unless I've had to revisit the race for whatever reason, say I DNF'd, and then I realized like, oh yeah, I hated this part.
Right.
But you kind of just, like Sherlock Holmes would call it his mind palace. I just kind of go into my head, and music's one of the things that's always worked well for me during the best parts of a race and the worst parts of a race. Sometimes if I'm feeling really low or starting to feel sluggish, I throw on a little heavy metal, start getting myself amped up and get myself a little angry, and then I go. I just get that energy. So and then feeding off people around me. Sometimes I don't feel great, but I feel like, well, if I'm smiling, then it's kind of showing that I feel good. And maybe I can even trick myself into the like, yeah, maybe I do feel good, and
Yeah.
there's so many highs and lows during a race. And I try not to focus too much on those negative parts, that they do happen, but I think it's just about trying to keep a positive outset, from the get-go.
You mentioned a DNF that can be a reality in the sport. How can you explain a moment when you had to make that decision, and what you have learned from any time that you've had to have a DNF? For those who might be new to the sport, that's a did not finish, that you had to abandon the race before the finish line, either because you missed the cutoff time, your body wasn't cooperating, your mind wasn't cooperating, for any host of reasons. For you, what does that experience look like, and things that you take away from those DNF experiences?
So initially, when I first started ultra running, I'm like, I don't want to DNF ever. And, I hear people say that all the time. And, some people will push through anything, and, good for them. I will never do it at the expense of injury. And I think it kind of it really depends on kind of how hard you're pushing as well. I've had DNFs in races just because I've got called into work. I've been first place in a race and gotten called into work and had to drop everything and leave like right there.
Wow. Okay.
So it's like, for me, it's just kind of like, I would run so many races at times just because I just love doing it, but at the expense of like, well, I don't know, I'm on call, I might get called into work. And if I get called into work, then I just got to go. Then that's the end of that. And then I've had races where I've gotten injured. Years ago, I got a injury at Black Canyon on my lead up to, I got a calf tear, and I had Orca's 100 several weeks later, and I'm like, I pulled myself from Black Canyon, and then I was really really nervous going to Orca's. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. I know it's just going through the ringer of rehab and trying to make things work, but knowing that like entering that race, it might be a reality. And sure enough, my calf went out 20 miles in, and I pushed myself another 30 miles. And then I started thinking about like, I've just run 30 miles on this calf injury. I don't think it's worth running another 50.
Right.
I could come back next year feeling better. And that's what I did. I pulled myself from that race. I made the most out of the weekend. Again, it used to bug me a little bit more. I run far more races than most do. Especially people like on the elite level, they might throw down 1 or 2 races a year. I threw down, a couple of years ago, I did 5 ultras in 6 weeks. So, it's just,
Wow.
it's
Right.
when you do things like, and I'm not running easy races either. So it's just, it's going to be a reality. And at the end of the day, I'm just, I paid for it. I'm going to go have some fun. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't, So, um, I, I would tell anyone that, just don't even let it bother you. Just, life's too short to think about that. There are so many races out there, so many things to see, so many opportunities. You're gonna have great days, you're gonna have bad days. So I really don't think it's getting hung up on, oh, this day I didn't make it. We're not, for people that are doing ultras, we're not running 5 and 10Ks, I mean, we're
Yeah.
going out there and running for hours upon hours at a time. It's just going to be a reality.
That's a healthy perspective. Thanks for sharing that. Is there a moment? Do you have a favorite distance that you like?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
A favorite distance, ultra distance that you think is your sweet spot or that you enjoy the most?
Favorite race?
Our
Uh,
favorite distance, like
oh, distance.
50K,
Oh,
100
sorry.
mile. Yeah.
Yeah, 200 miles.
Really?
That's I 200-mile races have become my favorite. I've done
Awesome.
um, four of them now. I think three, four. Yeah. I would love to do more. Maybe when I get out of medicine, I will do more. I'd love to do the Triple Crown all in one
Yeah.
one slingshot. But I've done two of those races on different years, and it's definitely my race. I love for racing days at a time,
Yeah.
and I've done pretty decent at them. So I just like to kind of keep going down that road. 100 milers are great too. I feel like they're a little bit harder than 200s, which is kind
Mm.
of crazy to think about
Yeah.
on being half the distance. But the time constraints are different, and you get I mean the types of athletes are doing them. There's a lot more athletes obviously doing 100 milers, faster athletes, and so I've kind of, it's taken me a few years to kind of get the hang of it, being able to push hard and do well at those races. At the same time, a lot can go wrong.
Yeah.
A lot can go wrong in a 200-mile race too, but there's a lot more time to make up. And, 100 milers, you just have that you've basically got 30 hours generally, to get things done. So, but, whether you're I mean, 50 milers are also another one of my favorite distances,
Yeah.
only because I can finish those by like dinner time, so I
Right.
don't have to run through the night.
Over dinner. Well, I've completed a couple 100 milers, and I'm on the early wait list for Moab 240. So that may be an experience later this fall that I'm hoping for. And right now, my email is lighting up with a wait list for Bigfoot 200, which I don't think will
Hmm.
work out with my schedule, but I'm excited to try that distance out. So thanks for the inspiration. Is there a moment in those longer distance races when you sort of, is there a kind of emotional or spiritual component to you at a certain distance or a certain type of experience that sort of is transcendent for you in running? What does that look like for you beyond maybe the physical experience?
Yeah, the first 50 miler I did, I cried.
Mm.
I had no idea while I was crying. I was just running, and then tears started running down my face, and just got really emotional. And I it's like, what is going on? I mean, I've run lots of distances, but this is just, it was all new to me. You, I think your body, when you start getting into these longer distances, it wants to do whatever it can to stop. And certainly gotten used to it over the years, but there's moments even in my 200s. Um, I if your mind can wander and wander for hours, so sometimes you think back to stuff and that
Mm.
you wouldn't normally think about. It brings up emotions, and I you can't really do much other than cry sometimes, or just deal with it in that moment. Your body is just again trying to do whatever it can to stop, and sometimes you're breathing hard and you're thinking about this like really sad or horrible moment, and it just kind of hits you harder than you would just in passing. So um but but then there's good too, plenty of goosebump feelings when I'm running through the mountains, and sometimes a good song comes on. I just get the goosebumps going and juices flowing, and and it just feels just amazing. It's just the most euphoric feeling you could ever ask for. And people always ask me, "What's the runner's high I feel like?" I'm like, "Well, I get it pretty much every time I run, only because you're not going to get it. In my opinion, you're not going to get it in just a couple miles. You get it, after your body warms up, and then you start getting in your rhythm, and then your body relaxes, and then you just kind of flow with nature. I can probably say I don't really feel it much on the roads. Definitely on the trails, but that's why I've stuck with trail running. One of the most probably the most touching experiences that I ever had was I ran this 200-mile race across Wales, and my mom had died just about a month earlier from
Oh,
cancer,
I'm sorry to hear that.
and my yeah, yeah, she was watching me from above, so I was running across Wales, and I hadn't seen my dad's and talked to him in a long time, probably like 12, 14 years or something. So
Mm.
we just not great communicators with each other. I mean, he lives in England, I live in the States, and we're just really, really bad at picking up the phone. And I called him up, obviously after my mom died, I was like, I have to just pick up the phone. That's all it takes. And called him up and told him I was coming to visit, and that I wanted to see him. And he came out. He was at the finish line. And when I crossed that finish line, I saw him. I just burst into tears, and gave him a big hug. And it's still like, I think about that moment, and it was definitely one of the most special moments of my life. Just because, having not seen him for so long, and then all the other emotional stuff and all that time, and and time wasted, really, because you think about just not being able to just not pick up the phone. Like, how hard is that? But I thought about it the entire race, every day going across. I was like, wow, I'm gonna get to see him. And then finally on that day 5, after 200 miles, he was there. So that was definitely the most special moment I've ever had.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, Compelling experiences physically, mentally, spiritually. So that's wonderful. Thank you for including us in that. Most most ultra runners have maybe some bucket list races on their list, and not uncommon on that short list for many runners is the Western States 100. Probably the Super Bowl of U.S. racing, on the trail scene, challenging to get into it. When was the first exposure you had to Western States, and how long until you decided it was something that you wanted to pursue for yourself?
Yeah, like Western took me 7 years essentially.
Okay.
The first when I first got into ultra running, I mean, it was on the scene. After a few years, I went out and I did some pacing out there, and
Hmm.
crewing and for a couple different friends, and I knew it was going to be in the cars for me someday. It's not my usual type of 100-mile race. I've kind of just gravitated towards the absurd types of mountain races. The harder the better. But
Yeah.
I was like, at some point, I'm going to have to check off Western, and this was my year. I was actually supposed to run a race in England this month, the Montana Spine Race, and go back home, see my family, and then I was like, oh, I'm not going to get into Western. It happens every year. I go through the same, like, disappointment, and yeah, they picked my name, so I was like, well, I guess England will have to wait till next year. And yeah, I'm really happy to get it done. I'm a one and done guy for most races.
Mm.
I like to finish them. The only reason I would repeat a race is if it's kind of a local thing and it's just for a training race, just for fun, or if it's a DNF at some other big race, I just go back to get a little bit of redemption. But for the most part, after I finish a race, I go on to the next one. And these races just get harder and harder to get into.
Yeah.
I like the opportunity to give that to somebody else. And the trails, sport is getting super popular. So you know, again, get my one and done, move on to the next thing. There's so many races out there and so many places to see. And I
Yeah.
really, that's kind of how I book my races is I pick a place that I really want to go visit. And I'm like, oh, is there a 50-mile or 100-mile race out there? Sign me up.
Awesome. Do you mind sharing with folks? I'm sure a lot of folks know about Western States. Do you mind sharing why it's a challenge to get into the race and maybe a little bit about its history and why it's a compelling race to be in?
Yeah, so it's the oldest 100 in the States. I think they allow around 360 people to run it. Thousands of people apply each year. And then, you can get in through a golden ticket or by winning certain races that they allow.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to qualify every single year, put your name in the lottery every year. And then if you don't get in, you got to do it again and again. And basically leave your June open every year, hoping that you're going to get in. But I again, only having gone there and volunteered or, crew pace, the atmosphere is unparalleled for a race in the States. It kind of harkens back to some of the races that you would go and see in Europe where people just line the trails, the atmosphere, the excitement, the whole week leading up to it is just phenomenal. And the caliber of athletes. There's just so many elite athletes that go there to show their stuff, to shine. And, that's, there's been some amazing records broken there, and from
Mm-hmm.
people all over the world. And it's just something it's a spectacle. What can I say?
Yeah. Yeah. And qualifying means doing another 100K, 100-miler or something of a similar distance that checks the box for a qualifying race for Western, and then you get your
Yep.
your name in the hopper. And I think depending on the number of years, you get a few extra tickets in the hopper. Depending on the number of years, you said you were 7 years qualified in the lottery before your name got picked.
Yeah, so I had 7 years, but for some reason my ticket count got screwed up. I don't know why. And so I ended up with it showed 4 years. And so I really was like, oh yeah, I don't know what happened, but
Mm.
I'm not, I'm not getting in this year. And whatever, luck of the draw, I guess. I'll take it. I mean, I've had friends that have gotten in after one try. So
Right.
at this point, I things like this at this point, it doesn't bother me. Hard Rock's another one that I've been
Mm.
waiting to do.
Yeah.
And when I get in, I get in. It's I'll find another race. I just a race like Hard Rock though, I'm hoping my legs hold up by the time I get into that one.
Right. Anything you're doing differently for training for Western States that's different from previous races you've done? You've got a pretty deep resume, so anything new or unique for Western States that you're doing?
So yeah, my running has been a lot more structured.
Mm.
I did the Hurt 100 earlier this year, and that
And
race
won
is
it, right?
very, yeah.
Congratulations. Nice
Yeah.
work.
Thank you. That's a very technical race, very
Mm.
mountainous, and humid. So the heat thing I'm dealing with again at Western States, but the terrain is much different. It's far
Mm.
more runnable. So I've had to adjust my training. I normally just like going up and down the craziest mountains that I can find, running running peaks, and I've had to kind of lay off all that stuff and stick to more
Mm.
fire roads and
Interesting.
do a lot more speed training. And it's hurt. I've beaten my quads into oblivion over the past few months and gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm either going to be broken or in the best training of my life. And there was a couple moments where I was like, oh, I don't know how much more my legs can take this. And then you kind of take a few weeks back,
Mm.
to recoup and then go back out there. And then it's like, oh yeah, now I can see it working. And my
Nice.
coach, Eric Sensman, I mean, he's run Western States a few times. I mean, he's worked with me over the years, and he's definitely pushed me and molded me. And I'm very thankful for everything that he's done. And I'm going to go out there and just give it my all. I put the best training in my life for this, and
Nice.
I'll go out there and just try and give it the best day that I can.
Being up in the Flagstaff, Phoenix area, the heat is kind of just par for the course for you, or have you done anything unique for the heat?
No, having trained in Phoenix for years, I live in Flagstaff now, which is a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
But high elevation, I'm good at that. So it starts
Hmm.
out in high elevation, so that's not going to be an issue for me. And then I do deal with the heat pretty well. I know how to keep my core cool. Just have to run a little bit slower and manage. And I had the same issue at Hurt. It was brutal through the day. The difference being that was like the humidity factor. States is closer to Phoenix, where it's like a dry heat. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've dealt with that stuff, Cocodona, and so I just, I'm not really too worried about it. I think probably more people from out of state are kind of a little more worried about that sort of thing. And I see it every year. People go out too hard and they blow up, and
Mm.
I'm counting on that again.
Yeah. Any strategy that you've got in mind, vision for the day, what you're hoping to do?
Yeah, I'm gonna be very conservative, I think. Again, I did that at Hurt, and it worked out well for me. I do want to push a little bit on this race. Like I said, it's a little bit more runnable, but I'm gonna manage my expectations. I'm gonna run smart and manage the heat well, and wait till the sun goes down, and then I can start kind of picking up my pace. And that's where a lot of people start to fall apart, is the heat of the day. By the time it gets to nighttime, that's when they just fall apart and break down. And I did the same thing. I just kind of slogged it through the day, and as soon as the sun went down, I started going to town, and I was watching the people around me like throwing up, and I felt great. So yeah, I'll pretty much kind of use the same strategy. Um, I have some great pacers, some great crew, so I am pretty excited to see how this goes.
Any new nutrition, new gear that you're excited about? Or are you going to stick with tried and true?
So yeah, I've been using the same gear for years now. Thankfully, started picking each of them up as a sponsor over the years.
Awesome.
But I think probably my two newest ones are Ultra Spire. So I'll be using their bottles, and Waist Light, which is great at Hurt, and Gingy socks, which I've been wearing for years. So yeah, I pretty much just stick to what I know, and what's comfortable with. I don't like trying anything new. Nutrition wise, Spring's another one I've been using over the years, and that
Yeah.
works really well. Um, and then I do my usual kind of low carb approach, and again, which works well if the heat and you can't keep food down. I just don't worry about it. Get some liquid calories in. I manage it well.
How are you training? Do you train low carb or fasted in order to kind of tune up that fat burning system? What's your process there?
Yeah, most of the time I'm low carb. I use keto as a tool,
Hmm.
several days before a race, to kind of supercharge my fat burning. But yeah, I run at heart rate, and I monitor all that stuff. I'm pretty diligent about sticking to the plan, whether I'm in my training runs. And it's I made the switch years ago, probably 6 years ago now, I think, and it totally changed the way I run. I don't really get stomach issues, digestive issues, and then when things like the heat come into play, if I'm having problems keeping food down because of heat exhaustion, I can just run off my own body fat, and That I did that at Cocodona. I went my first 100 miles with maybe like 1,200 calories
Amazing.
because I could barely keep anything down. And it worked wonders. And then once I got the food in, it was just, game on. I actually ran the second part of that race better than I did the first. So I, everybody's got their method. It seems to work for me. So I'm
So you
gonna
introduce
stick with
carbs a
it.
couple days before the race, and then you'll use carbs during the race if you're feeling good. If not, then you can rely on your fat burning system.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I use carbs. I don't abstain from them during the race.
Hmm.
I definitely use them, but I just take in far less carbs than most. Probably maybe 100 calories an hour on
Yeah.
average. I mean,
Hmm.
I pretty much take in something like every hour to every hour and a half in a higher effort. So it's not a lot, but
It's
it's
amazing.
all I need. I did some testing recently down in the valley in Phoenix, and where they kind of measure your fat burning. And I
Hmm.
was they put me on a treadmill stress test, and I was going like a 6:28 pace on a 5% incline, and I never once like crossed over into burning carbs. I burned fat pretty much the entire time, and I was burning over 2 grams of carbs a minute, which works out like a gram of carbs is about like 9 calories. So it's basically burning 18 calories a minute of just fat. So when you look at your body, and your body has 150,000 calories of fat, even the most lean
Right.
athlete, and then you've got about 1,500 or so uh, glycogen calories. Which one's better? So if you're burning, if you have all these carb or all these fat calories that you can burn off of instead of all these carb calories, I'm going to choose the fat. And you'll always burn a little bit of carbs, but it's the
Sure.
difference of burning one as your main fuel source versus the other one. And that's why I don't need to take in as many regular carb calories, is because I'm kind of trickling on that side. Whereas the other one, I can just go all day. I'll never run
Right.
out. So
And for folks interested in that approach, um, from a keto perspective, is that more focused on kind of more of a meat based diet, or are you just trying to stay low carb? What is more of a plant based? What's sort of a balance there from a
so
nutrition
yeah, I
perspective
mean,
on your everyday?
so the keto thing is I drop in a keto a couple times during as I cycle it during
Mm,
my training and right before a race, but most of the time I'm doing low carb. If I'm doing big heavier weeks, I'll take in anywhere from 100 to 150 grams of carbs because I'm putting the mileage in, so it
right.
doesn't make sense to stress my body that much. But if I dial back my mileage and I'm taking some rest weeks, I might just drop into keto just because like, hey, I feel great when I do it,
Yeah.
and I'm not don't need to take in as much anyway. So, but yeah, it's kind of just, and you don't necessarily have to go into keto to do this. I mean, you're basically just training your body to be metabolically shift from burning carbs to fat. We all burn fat initially when we go out. When we start running, at some point your body switches over and then to burning glucose. So you basically are training your body to just burn fat primarily. And a lot of that has to do with running in heart rate.
Mm,
You find your zone two,
hmm.
which is your kind of your fat burning zone, and you try and stick with it. And a lot of people will think, well, you can't run as fast. I'm like, well, yeah, you can, because when I first started off, it was difficult. I was running a lot slower, and now I can throw down to 6:30 pace in zone two. And
Amazing.
running elevation helps, obviously, training your body, but you can definitely push yourself and do these exercises to get your body used to it. Um, and again, it's not for everybody, but if you're having stomach issues, if you're having you know issues with like foods that you're taking down, it's worth investing some time in. I met with Peter Defty. He's the manager of Vespa years ago, and through Nick Corey, one of my Air Racing teammates, and they're the ones that kind of got me into it. And I'm like, what's the worst that can go wrong? So if you want to learn more about kind of optimizing your fat metabolism, you can go to like vespaofm.com. There's a plethora of information out there. It's really great.
Thanks for walking us down that kind of nutrition path. I think it's a super compelling aspect of ultra that I'm seeing more and more athletes adopting, and thanks for sharing some of that insight. Kind of to wrap up the Western States piece, and then maybe a couple of lessons learned over a life, last decade or so, or of ultra running. Biggest fear, biggest excitement about Western States?
I'm sorry, say that last one.
Sort of your biggest fear or your biggest,
fears.
most exciting thing about Western States?
Sorry, the reception's breaking up here.
Oh, no problem. The thing that you're most excited about Western States, the thing that you're most concerned about the race?
Oh, okay. Most excited, getting it done.
Okay.
Like, I really just, I just really want to kind of just check it off the bucket list and go on to the next one. I have a lot of friends and a lot of supporters that are really kind of hoping the best for me on this race. I want to do well. I'm going to finish, but yeah, it's gotten to that point in the training where I really just, I want it to be done and go on to the next one.
Yeah.
And, I'm not the, I like to think of myself as an elite athlete, but there are so many better athletes out there and probably running this race. I would like to see how I stack up against them, but
sure.
I'm realistic with it, and I'll give it my best day, and we'll see what happens. But once it's over, it's over, and I can just kind of go on to the next one. I like doing big mountain races where I'm just putting myself through the ringer. So
yeah. This will probably do some of that. Western will do that. Ways you've changed physically as a person since the days when you were tipping the scales. How do you think trail running has changed you as a person? Does the work you do, training, racing, translate into other aspects of your life, and how has that changed you?
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna move this here.
No worries.
It's this, the reception is just kind of being spotty here.
Yeah, I can ask you again. How has does trail running, the training that you do, the racing that you do, how does that translate into other aspects of your life? And how has that benefited you?
Patience, for one. It's definitely helped with my stress and anxiety. Putting your body through the ringer and going through some of the hardest terrains and moments of your life, and you come to just everyday life dealing with things like waiting in line, for example. It's not people come to me all the time and are like, you're so relaxed, you never freak out, you're always just low key. I'm like, yeah, because I'm getting all this great exercise and feeling good, low cortisol levels, all that sort of stuff. But you put your body through a whole another level of pain that you don't normally have to deal with in everyday life. And it's not worth it, really. Stressing out about all these like little petty things in life, and someone cutting you off, and I think people that deal with that stuff on the daily, and a lot of that can be just living in city life, having to deal with many types of people. I mean, I moved to a smaller town, which is kind of nice, than Flagstaff, and the people are a lot, I would say friendlier, and you go into a store, everyone kind of knows your name, and it just changes, and like ultra running has done that for me as well. Just kind of, it's molded me into being a better person. I think about how I used to stress out about the tiniest little things at work, and now it's just like, everything will work out, and it generally does. And there's no, you know, you can go out and you can spend all this time in the mountains and see the most beautiful places, and even, I mean, even for hiking, I mean, but ultra running, you just get to see it a lot more. You get to go a lot further, and I take pictures to remind myself and hopefully inspire other people that, like, there's more to life than just this everyday stuff, just going to the bars or just going, you know, and just, doing, I mean, sports are great, don't get me wrong, but things getting more and more popular with more and more crowds. And then you go to amusement parks, and then you just like more and more people and more crowds and more time stressing out because you can't get on a ride or you're like stuck waiting in line. It's like, what are you doing? Go out, enjoy life. You get one life. You go out and see the world. So that's, I guess, my takeaway from it is just, I use it as a mechanism now to where I can go out and travel. I can see places and hopefully check off all these little check boxes before I die.
Well, your Strava feed is definitely one of the most visually impressive. Always love the photos that you're posting there. I think it is inspiring for folks. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting trail running or who aspires to begin trail running? Any advice for them as they get started, and maybe something you wish you would have known when you started trail running?
So first step, get yourself a pair of shoes, just get out the door. Don't get caught up in the watch. Don't get caught up in all the gear and all that stuff. I mean, maybe have a water bottle. That would be great. But yeah, just kind of get the foot out the door. And also don't even think about like, oh, I'm only going to get to see this, so it's not worth it. I could only go this far. It just takes time to build up that endurance and that mileage and do a little research too. Get an app called, like All Trails or something, and then I look at the pictures. I'm like, wow, this place looks cool, and then I'm looking at the map, and then I normally kind of take that and then apply it to my plan, and then figure out a longer way of doing it or whatever. But it's just whatever it is you do, just kind of go out and take a chance. I had a experience this last weekend with a friend, teammate of mine, and we wanted to go on this waterfall, a little run up through in Tahoe there. And as we were going up, we were like, should we do an out and back? And we're like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And then I was like, well, maybe we can make it a loop. And so I pull up my map and I'm plotting it out, and I'm like, yeah, we could plot this out, and having not even idea what the terrain's like or anything. And so we decided to do it. And as we're going up, it starts raining, and then it starts sleeting, and then snowing. And we're going up these like boulder slabs. And, I could tell she was getting a little nervous, like, oh, we should get back. Because then we're like hearing thunder. And
right.
I'm just, I got a shit-eating grin on my face. I'm just like, this is awesome. It's so amazing. And a little bit of worry in her eyes, I could tell. But finally we reached the ridge, and then we're going down. And she's like, this is like the most epic run of the year I've had. And I was like, I know, right? Me too. And, you don't get that if you don't take that chance. You got to take a chance in life. You got to just kind of just say, you know what? YOLO, and see what happens. Obviously you want to be safe, and I've had some circumstances where I'm like, maybe shouldn't have gone this way, but still here to talk about it. So things work out. So I think it's the first step, definitely just getting your foot out the door, and then try not to worry about things. Kind of let it flow off your shoulders and just go.
Related to that, any myths or beliefs about trail running that you would like to debunk? Anything that you think is a perception out there that's not accurate?
Oh, I don't really miss. I'm trying to think. No, I mean, runner's high. People say it doesn't exist. I mean, it does. I think that's you're just not going far enough, and you're just not giving enough. The hardest thing that people have when they go running or first get into running is they just want to go too hard. They go too fast, or
Mm.
they're like, oh, I used to run an 8 minute pace or whatever. And so they go out the door and they try to do an 8 minute pace and they're miserable, you slow down, just slow down. You should like go out there and run and have a nice, easy pace. You should be able to carry on a conversation. And that's really how you get to run further. You run further, you get that runner's high. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, maybe a couple of rapid fire questions, and then I just have a couple of wrap up questions for you, Peter. Favorite shoes? What do you run in? What do you like on the trail?
sorry, say again.
Your favorite shoes? What shoes work well for you out on the
Ultra.
trail? Ultra shoes, awesome.
Yeah, I've been using ultras for years now.
You mentioned sort of packaged race nutrition. That sounds like it's not your favorite, but you did mention, I think, Spring. Other packaged nutrition that works well for you.
I use Vespa primarily. It's a nature's catalyst, so I take that as part of the low carb, fuel source, and that along with Spring, and then regular food. I'll eat as much regular food as I can.
Yeah, favorite real food on a race course. You mentioned quesadillas earlier, but anything favorite at an aid station that really speaks to you?
If they have it, sushi.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that many
I've
times
had
at
it
aid stations.
few aid stations. Yeah.
That sounds like a
best.
winner. Sounds like a winner.
Yeah.
Anti-chafe, or is chafing not an issue for you? I think I saw an interview where you said Hurt 100 chafing was a challenge, but any recommendations there for someone getting started?
Squirrel's nut butter. It's the best. Flagstaff local.
Yeah.
And they've been really good to me over the years. So that's the good stuff.
For carrying stuff, a pack or a belt or nothing at all? What's kind of your, how do you carry stuff around on that course?
Western, I think I'm just going to go bottles, maybe a belt. But yeah, if for my longer mountain stuff, I generally use a pack. I use Ultra Spire.
Yeah.
They have some really great gear.
I was going to ask you toe socks or regular socks, but you said Injinji earlier, so toe socks.
Yep, all the way. No blisters.
Favorite trail runner to watch? Anyone that you enjoy watching them out on the course or following their career?
Killian Jornet. He's the GOAT. Does his videos and and Francois Dehane as well. They're both up there. I mean, just shredders, and they do they're the guys I saw in magazines early on that I was like,
yeah,
that's what I want to do.
It's awesome. It feels like watching a mountain goat, actually a goat, in addition to being the goat. Yeah. Bucket list race. Now you got Western States you're going to check off here in a few days. After that, I heard a Hard Rock. Anything else that's on your list? I think I saw UTMB you've done before. Other bucket list races that you're thinking about?
TDG, Tour de Gent, eventually. I'm hopefully in Montana Spine Race next year. And then Barclay Marathons. Hopefully get another shot at that next year. That's going to be kind of my go-to, like, training every year until I can start to figure that one out.
Next finisher is what, 15, 16? I'm trying to remember what number. The finisher number is like 14 or 15?
I think they're at 15 now.
15? Okay. All right. Well, hey, the name of the podcast is Trail Success. What does trail success mean to you?
Trail success, I guess, would be just getting out that door. Even as an ultra runner, there's days it's just, you don't want to get out there. You're just feeling like crud. Sometimes you just have to get out for that first mile. Go out for that first mile, and if you feel good, then go for a second mile. And there's been days where I've had to bail after a few miles because it just wasn't my day. But then other days where I'm like, I don't know even if I can get through this today. I've like a 20-mile run that I'm supposed to do for my training, and I go out there and just get a couple miles in, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be a good day. It started out horrible, but now this is clicking away. So It's just getting your body moving in general, whether you're hiking, running, just it'll you get outside, you get nature, you can hear the birds, you hear like waterfalls or whatever it is, and it'll just all that stress will start to flow away and ease the tension. So it'll make your day better.
And what inspires you the most about trail running, and who do you hope to inspire by your trail running efforts?
Um, Man, so I guess like getting outside, and I really don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. Sorry. Um, I think, you know, there's so many people that have inspired me over the years, as far as like Jamil Corey and all these other great guys that you see, Nicodemus Hahn, Jeff Browning, and they all do these amazing things. I really don't consider myself like, I mean, I like to inspire people, but I really, you know, I don't even put myself in the same class as any of these people. I mean, I know I do a lot of the same distances. Um, I like to think that I inspire people to go out and do these things. I really just like going out and taking the pictures and kind of just, for my own mindset. And if I could share some of these things along the way with some friends, then that's great. Um, I'm going to keep doing it, and if that works for rolling over onto other people, then that's great too. I'm hoping with the coaching thing that I can kind of push people in that direction as well. Just kind of open some eyes, and but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time accepting it at times. Like what I'm doing, and sometimes I don't even realize that I've run certain races or that
Right.
I've done well at these races. I try not to think about it, and I just kind of move on to the next thing. And after doing so many, you just kind of lose track. But um, I think anyone can do this stuff. I really believe that, and really just it again from a guy that was overweight. You just got to get your foot out the door and then start just making those changes in your life. Get a pair of shoes, just get outside.
And tell us about the coaching you're doing. You've got a few athletes that you're coaching right now, and you mentioned that as something you hope to do more of in the future. What's that experience been like, and what excites you about coaching other athletes?
Yeah, so I started a few months ago. I've been actually coaching for about a year and a half, kind of under the table with a few folks, just to see if I'd like it. And but yeah, I started my business a few months ago, and so far it's been pretty positive. I've seen a lot of growth already in these athletes. Four of them are running the Mogollon 100 coming up this fall, which I'll be help crewing. It's got to be kind of our first major race altogether. I'm really excited to see what it brings, and you know, I hope through word of mouth that, and hopefully doing things like this, people will kind of look me up and see I'm, if you're tailored, if you want me to tailor a plan for some of these tougher races, I'm definitely your guy. I've done them. I know how to handle them. You know, I I probably wouldn't be a great coach for a triathlon, for example, but marathon, ultra marathons, I can definitely get you sorted. And I really, I'm hoping down the road to be able to travel around and visit different athletes all over the states and kind of run their trails with them over time and really share in those experiences. I'm kind of doing that locally here now with some of my athletes, trying to arrange some trail days. And I, for me, it's just, I love it. I love any excuse to go out with some friends and just enjoy a trail run and show them a place that maybe they've never run before. And if I can show them that they're capable of doing these big races too and doing well, then that's even better.
That's amazing. Super excited for that coaching effort, and know that you are inspiring folks. I've been inspired by you, following you online for a number of years, and I think we first crossed paths. I wanted to share this shot. I was out running the Rim to Rim to Rim in November of 2018. I just come off of my first 100-miler, and I was out in Arizona for Thanksgiving, and I thought, you know what? The Grand Canyon is just a couple hours away. I can't miss this opportunity. I think it was also the year that North Face 50 got canceled because of fires, because there were a number of FKTs. I think a female FKT runner blasted past me about halfway across the canyon. But as on North Kaibab, I crossed paths with a gentleman on his way down, and that was you. And I think we exchanged photos so we could get a shot of ourselves there on North Kaibab. So this is a photograph courtesy of Peter Mortimer. So thank you for that, and had a chance to start following you on Strava after that encounter. But thanks for taking the photo, and thanks for inspiring me and inspiring a lot of other folks with your efforts out on the trails. I know you're doing that for yourself and others around you, but you are, having that ripple effect of inspiring others to get out and do amazing things. Where can folks follow you online, Peter? Either your coaching, your running, and what's the best way to follow you online?
So PJ Mortimer on Instagram, Peter Mortimer on Facebook, and my coaching website is 8moremilescoaching.com.
Can you tell us about 8 More Miles? I see it on your hat. I see it in other places. What's the history there?
Yeah, it's so it started out as a quote unquote running joke amongst some friends. Every year I take a bunch of folks on Thanksgiving weekend across South Mountain in Phoenix along the National Trail, which is about this 15-mile trail, and I normally park cars at the end, so we have a shuttle back. And one year they were doing construction, and so I couldn't park at the usual area, and so I had to park a couple miles down the road. And I'm like, oh man, the trail's going to be even longer this year. I didn't tell anybody, and so we were going along the route, and we were normally at the spot. It was about halfway, and they asked me, like, how far is it? And I'm like, 8 more miles. I'm like, okay. A few more miles go by, and they're like, how much further? I'm like, 8 more miles. And they're like, wait a minute. And then I had to break the news that, it's going to be a little bit further today. And it was really hot, and there may have been a few middle fingers in my direction, but that's normally the case. And everyone got through it, and we all laughed about it. And so we made hats out of it, kind of as a joke. And it kind of became my slogan over the years. And I actually trademarked it and just
Awesome.
turned it into my coaching business. But I've done that 10 years now, that run with them. And I think back to, the first time that I did it, and that's kind of my motivation, sharing these experiences with friends, showing them that they can do things that they wouldn't normally do, and just having some fun while doing it.
Awesome. Well, Peter, I can't say thank you enough for myself. Impressed, inspired, and really appreciative of you being willing to share your journey with me and the listeners of the Trail Success Podcast. As we hope to give other trail athletes an opportunity to learn from everyday folks like them who are trail athletes, trying to balance life and sport to be inspired and to inspire others with their trail successes. So thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Invite everyone to follow Peter online. But thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Super inspired, super impressed. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck at Western States 100 and beyond.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.